The old veteran sat in the corner of the hall, his forearms folded across his chest. His scales had turned gray with age, and his eyes carried the weight of memories that refused to fade. Commander Thralvin had not spoken about the war in decades. He preferred silence. Silence was safer than remembering. The young human woman approached him carefully. She carried a recording device and wore the badge of the Historical Documentation Council. Her name was Kira, and she had kind eyes. Too kind, Thralvin thought. She did not know what she was asking for. "Commander Thralvin?" she said softly. "I'm honored to meet you. Would you be willing to share your experiences from the contact wars?" Thralvin looked at her for a long moment. Around them, the veterans' hall buzzed with quiet conversations. Other old soldiers sat in small groups drinking and telling sanitized stories. They talked about glory and victory. They never talked about the truth. "Why do you want to know?" Thralvin asked. His voice was rough from years of disuse. "Because the young ones don't understand," Kira said. She sat down across from him without waiting for permission. "They think the alliance with humanity was easy. They don't know what it cost, what any of it cost." Thralvin's secondary arms twitched, a sign of anxiety among his people. "If I tell you, you will not sleep well." "I know," Kira said simply. Something in her directness reminded him of them, of the humans. They never hid from hard truths either. Thralvin sighed a long hissing sound and began. 50 years ago, humanity made first contact with the Galactic Confederation," he said. "We thought we understood what that meant. We had encountered 73 species before them. We believed we knew how the universe worked." He paused, memories flickering behind his eyes like old films. Humans were different from the moment we met them. They were small, weak-looking. Their homeworld had heavy gravity, yes, but they seemed fragile. Soft skin, no natural weapons, no armor. They lived such short lives, barely 80 cycles on average. We thought they would be simple to integrate, perhaps useful for basic labor or support roles. Kira activated her recording device. Thralvin barely noticed. The Confederation Council granted them provisional membership, standard protocol. They could join our defense forces, learn our ways, prove themselves worthy of full citizenship. Most species took decades to adapt to military service. Humans asked when they could begin. Immediately, they said. That should have been our first warning. Thralvin's main hands clenched into fists. I was assigned to the Joint Training Facility on Outpost Meridian, a tactical officer, meant to evaluate human capabilities and integrate them into standard combat doctrine. I met Captain Jinho there, human male, 32 cycles old, very young by our standards. He commanded a unit of 50 human soldiers. What was your first impression? Kira asked. I thought he was friendly. Too friendly. Humans smile constantly. Did you know that? They show their teeth when they are happy. For most species, showing teeth is a threat display, but humans do it to show warmth. It confused us terribly. A bitter laugh escaped Thralvin's throat. Captain Jinho smiled at me when we first met. He shook my hand. That is another human thing. Physical contact with strangers. They do it to build trust. He asked me about my family, my home. He seemed genuinely interested. I remember thinking he was naive, sweet even, like a child in an adult's uniform. Thralvin leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant. The first training exercise was a disaster. Not for the humans, for us. We designed a standard tactical simulation. Urban combat scenario. The objective was to secure a building held by simulated enemies. We expected humans to follow standard Confederation doctrine. Advance in formation, suppress enemy positions, breach and clear systematically. They didn't? Kyra prompted. They did none of that, Thralvin said. Captain Jinho's unit split into small teams immediately. Chaos, we thought. They moved erratically. Used smoke and noise to create confusion. Half of them went through the building's ventilation system. Ventilation, we never considered that. Why would soldiers crawl through dirty, tight spaces when doors exist? He shook his head slowly. They completed the objective in 8 minutes. Standard Confederation forces averaged 23 minutes for the same scenario. When we asked Captain Jinho to explain his tactics, he seemed confused by our confusion. He said they were just using basic infiltration techniques. Basic. This was basic to them. Thralvin's voice dropped lower. But that was not the disturbing part. The disturbing part came after the exercise. One of my fellow instructors, a Valthrine like myself, criticized their methods, called them undisciplined, chaotic, dishonorable even.
Captain Jinho just smiled.
that same friendly smile. And he said something I will never forget. Kyra waited, hardly breathing. He said, "Honor doesn't stop bullets. Dead enemies do." Then he laughed, like it was a joke. But his eyes were not laughing. His eyes were calculating, measuring. In that moment, I realized that the friendly demeanor was a mask. Underneath it was something cold and sharp. The old veteran's scales rippled, a sign of deep discomfort. We reported our concerns to High Command, requested clarification on human military philosophy. What we learned was disturbing. Humans had been fighting wars on their homeworld for their entire recorded history, thousands of years of nearly constant conflict. They had refined warfare into a science. Every human military had detailed doctrines on tactics, strategy, logistics, psychological operations. Psychological operations? Kira asked. Warfare that targets the mind, not just the body, Thralvin explained. Most species fight for territory, resources, or honor. Humans fight to break their enemy's will to resist. They study fear. They weaponize it. During their own wars, they developed tactics specifically designed to terrify opponents into surrender. He took a long drink from his cup, buying time to steady himself. I requested access to human historical military archives. What I saw gave me nightmares for years. Humans had fought wars that killed millions of their own people. They had developed weapons so terrible that they banned themselves from using them. Chemical weapons that dissolved flesh. Biological weapons that spread disease. Atomic weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Kira's hand had stopped taking notes. She stared at Thralvin. And the truly terrifying part, Thralvin continued, was that they stopped using these weapons not because they could not, but because they chose not to. Humans had looked into the abyss of total destruction and consciously decided to step back. That level of restraint, that deliberate choice, meant everything they did in war was intentional, calculated. How did the other species react? Kira asked. Most did not take it seriously, Thralvin said. They thought humans were exaggerating, trying to seem tougher than they were. Humans are good at communication, good at diplomacy. They seemed so reasonable in council meetings, so eager to cooperate. We thought their brutal past was behind them, that they had evolved beyond such savagery. His four hands spread in a gesture of helplessness. We were fools. We did not understand that humans had not abandoned their capacity for violence. They had simply learned to control it, to direct it. And when the Krellian Dominion invaded Confederation space 6 months after humanity joined, we learned exactly what controlled human violence looked like. Thralvin's eyes met Kira's directly. That is when I met Lieutenant Mirai. That is when I learned what humans really were. And that is when everything changed. The old veteran fell silent. Around them, the hall had grown quiet. Other veterans had stopped their conversations. They were listening now, drawn by the weight in Thralvin's words. Kira swallowed hard. What happened at Blackwater Station? Thralvin closed his eyes. Everything. Thralvin remembered the asteroid clearly. Blackwater Station hung in space like a metal spider. All struts and modules connected by thin corridors. The station mined rare minerals from the asteroid belt. Nothing special. Just another resource point in the Confederation's vast network. That changed when the Krellian Dominion arrived with 10 warships. Thralvin had been aboard the CFS Stormbreaker, a light cruiser tasked with protecting the mining operations. His console lit up with warnings as the Krellian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Red hostile markers filled his tactical display. Numbers? Captain Velthan had asked from the command chair. 10 capital ships, Thralvin reported. His hands moved quickly across the controls. Approximately 8,000 ground troops. We have 300 defenders on the station, plus our ship. The mathematics were simple and terrible. They were vastly outnumbered. Evacuation? Someone asked. Not enough time, Thralvin said. The Krellians are already launching boarding craft. 60 transports inbound. Estimated arrival 14 minutes. Captain Velthan's scales had paled. Contact Fleet Command. Request immediate reinforcements. Tell them we need help now. Thralvin made the call. The response crushed whatever hope remained. Reinforcements would arrive in 72 hours. 3 days. The Krellians would take the station in 3 hours if they followed standard assault doctrine. Orders, sir? Thralvin asked. Tell the station to begin evacuation procedures. We'll cover their escape for as long as possible. Thralvin opened communications to Blackwater Station. A human face appeared on his screen. Major Dagan, commander of the station's security force. The human looked calm. Too calm. Major Dagan, you need to evacuate immediately, Thralvin said. Krellian forces are overwhelming. We cannot hold them. How long until reinforcements arrive? Dagan asked. 72 hours. The human nodded slowly. Then we hold for 72 hours. Thralvin's forearms froze. That's impossible. You have 300 people. They have 8,000. We have 317 people, actually, Dagan corrected. And about half of us are human. We can hold. Major, this is not a negotiation. You must evacuate. Dagan's expression hardened. Commander, with respect, I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you of our intention. We stay, we fight. You're welcome to help, but we're holding the station. The communication cut off. Thralvin stared at the blank screen in disbelief. Did that human just refuse evacuation? Captain Velthan asked. Yes, sir. Are they insane? Thralvin did not answer. He was beginning to suspect insanity had nothing to do with it. The Krellian assault began 12 minutes later. Their warriors were massive creatures, 3 meters tall and covered in thick armor like hide. They believed in honorable combat, direct confrontation, overwhelming force applied precisely. It was a philosophy that had won them dozens of conflicts. They breached Blackwater Station's outer hull in 6 locations simultaneously. Thralvin monitored the situation from the Stormbreaker, watching thermal signatures and communication channels. The first Krellian squad entered through the mining section. 20 warriors, heavily armed, moving in tight formation. Standard breach procedure. They expected resistance. They got something else entirely. The corridor exploded not from weapons fire, from the corridor itself. Sergeant Hanna, a human female and demolitions expert, had rigged the entire section with improvised explosives. Mining charges, fuel cells, compressed gas tanks. The Krellian squad ceased to exist in 2 seconds. What was that? Captain Velthan demanded. Thralvin checked his sensors. The humans. They turned the station into a weapon. More Krellian squads poured in through other breach points. They encountered walls that suddenly became electrified. Corridors that vented into space without warning. Gravity that shifted unexpectedly, sending warriors tumbling into prepared kill zones. Automated systems reprogrammed to attack anything that registered Krellian biosigns. And then there were the sounds. Thralvin picked them up on open communication channels. The humans were broadcasting across all frequencies. Not battle cries. Not threats. Something worse. Sounds from Earth's predators. Wolves howling. Tigers roaring. And underneath it all, human laughter. Cold, mechanical, endless. Why are they doing that? A junior officer asked. Psychological warfare, Thralvin said quietly. They're trying to unnerve the enemy. It was working. Krellian communications showed increasing stress. Warriors who believed in honorable combat faced an enemy that hid, trapped, and tormented. The station became a maze of death. Every corridor was a potential ambush. Every room might be a trap. Major Dagan's voice came over the emergency channel. All Krellian forces, this is Major Dagan of the Confederation Defense Force. You have invaded our territory. You will not leave alive. We know you understand this language, so listen carefully. We are human. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. And we do not fight fair. You should have stayed home. The message repeated on loop. In 17 languages, including Krellian. Thralvin watched his tactical display. Krellian forces were slowing down. Their advance had stalled. They were becoming cautious, fearful. Exactly what the humans wanted. 3 hours passed, then 6, then 12. The Krellians had taken only 30% of the station. They should have controlled everything by now. Thralvin observed Lieutenant Mirai during this time. The human female was a combat medic, moving through the battle zones with a medical kit and a small weapon. She wore white armor marked with red symbols. Medical personnel were supposed to be protected under Confederation law. Non-combatants. Mirai was anything but non-combatant. She moved through areas that even soldiers avoided, dragged wounded defenders to safety, treated injuries under direct fire, never stopped, never hesitated. Thralvin watched her carry an injured Valthrine soldier twice her size through a corridor, while Krellian warriors shot at her. She made it. The soldier lived. How is she doing that? Someone whispered. Adrenaline, another officer said. Humans flood their bodies with combat stimulants naturally. It makes them temporarily stronger, faster, less sensitive to pain. That's terrifying. That's evolution. Thralvin said quietly. 24 hours into the siege, the Krellian commander made his first mistake. He sent a communication demanding surrender.
Threatening to kill all defenders if they did not comply. Major Dagon responded personally.
You can kill us, maybe, but you'll bleed for every meter, every room, every corridor. And when reinforcements arrive, they'll find your bodies floating in space next to ours. Come and get us, the Krellian commander ordered a full assault. All troops. No holding back. They would drown the humans in numbers. It was exactly what Dagon wanted. The humans had fortified the station's central hub, turned it into a fortress. Every approach was covered by overlapping fields of fire. Every entrance was trapped. The Krellians charged in with overwhelming force. The battle lasted 6 hours, the most brutal 6 hours Thralvin had ever witnessed. The central hub became a slaughterhouse. Krellians died by the dozens, but so did humans. Thralvin watched thermal signatures wink out on his display. Each one represented a life ended, but the humans held. They held through day 2. Then day 3. 72 hours came and went. The reinforcements arrived to find Blackwater Station still in Confederation hands. Barely. The station was wrecked. Atmosphere vented. Power failing. Bodies everywhere. Of the 317 defenders, only 248 survived. Every single human who had been on the station was wounded. Some multiple times. Lieutenant Mireille had been shot 6 times. She was still treating patients when the medical evacuation teams arrived. Major Dagon met with Thralvin after it was over. The human's face was covered in dried blood and soot. His eyes were hollow, exhausted, but he stood straight. "Thank you for staying," Dagon said simply. "I did nothing," Thralvin replied. "You held this station. Not me. You didn't run. That meant something to us." Thralvin looked at the human for a long moment. "Major, why did you do this? Why not evacuate?" "You could have saved more lives," Dagon's expression hardened. "Because if we ran, they'd keep coming. They'd hit another station. Then another. Someone had to show them what happens when they invade our space. Someone had to make them afraid. And did you?" "Yes," Dagon said quietly. The Krellian commander killed himself rather than face his superiors after this defeat. They lost nearly 6,000 warriors taking a station we held with 300. Word will spread. They'll think twice before attacking us again. Thralvin felt something cold settle in his chest. "You deliberately turned this into a message." "A warning." "We turned it into a promise," Dagon corrected. "We promised to make invasion too expensive, too painful, too costly in blood and reputation. That's how you stop wars, Commander. You make them unthinkable." The human walked away, limping slightly. Thralvin watched him go. In that moment he understood. Humans did not fight battles to win battles. They fought battles to prevent future battles, even if it meant sacrificing themselves in the process. It was brilliant. It was horrifying. And it worked. 2 years after Blackwater Station, Thralvin held the rank of commander. He led the tactical division aboard the flagship of the Confederation's 3rd Fleet. The war with the Krellian Dominion had expanded across 12 star systems. Neither side was winning. The battle near the Turvox Nebula changed everything. The Krellian Dominion brought their super dreadnought to the fight. The ship's name translated to Eternal Harmony in standard language. It was 5 kilometers long and carried weapons that could destroy smaller ships with single shots. Its shields were experimental technology. Nothing the Confederation had could penetrate them. Admiral Krelthax, the fleet commander, stared at the massive vessel on the main display. His scales had turned pale gray, a sign of fear among the Valthrine. "Tactical analysis," he ordered. Thralvin worked his console quickly. Numbers filled his screens. He read them twice to be sure. Then a 3rd time. The results did not change. "Our weapons are ineffective," Thralvin reported. "Their shield harmonics shift too rapidly. We cannot maintain a sustained bombardment long enough to collapse them. Estimated time to breach shields with conventional weapons: 47 hours. They can destroy our fleet in 6. Recommendations? Retreat," Thralvin said quietly. "Immediately." Admiral Krelthax nodded slowly. "Prepare to withdraw. Signal all ships to—" "Wait!" A new voice cut across the command deck. Captain Jinho stood at the entrance to the bridge. The human wore a battered uniform. His ship, the strike cruiser Indomitable, had taken heavy damage in previous engagements. Thralvin could see fresh scars on Jinho's face. Captain, this is not the time, Admiral Krelthak said. With respect, Admiral, this is exactly the time. Jinho approached the tactical display. His eyes scanned the information. I have a solution. There is no solution, Thralvin said. The shields are impenetrable. From the outside, Jinho agreed. But shields are designed to stop weapons fire. They're not designed to stop ships. The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the human. You want to ram it? Admiral Krelthax asked slowly. Not exactly ram it. More like deliver a boarding party. Jinho manipulated the display showing the super dreadnought's hangar bay. Their hangar has to open periodically to launch fighters. When it does, the shields in that section drop for approximately 8 seconds, long enough for a damaged ship to crash through. Crash through, Thralvin repeated. You understand what you're saying? That would be suicide. It would be difficult, Jinho corrected, but not impossible. My crew volunteers. We take the Indomitable in through the hangar, board the ship, fight our way to the reactor core, destroy it from the inside. Admiral Krelthax's forearms trembled. Captain, your ship has 400 crew members. You're asking them to die. I'm asking them to fight, Jinho said calmly. And yes, most of us will probably die. But if we don't do this, the Eternal Harmony will destroy this fleet. Then the next fleet. Then it will strike at Confederation core worlds. Millions will die. We can stop that. 400 lives to save millions. The mathematics are clear. Thralvin felt sick. This is insane. Jinho looked at him. Those calculating eyes that hid behind a friendly face. Commander, you've fought alongside humans for 2 years now. Are you really surprised? He was not. That was the worst part. Thralvin was not surprised at all. Admiral Krelthax gave his permission. He had no choice. It was this or retreat. The Indomitable moved into position. Thralvin monitored communications between Jinho and his crew. The human captain explained the mission clearly. No deception. No false hope. This was almost certainly a one-way trip. Every single crew member voted to proceed. 400 humans chose death over retreat. They're singing, a communications officer said suddenly. What? Thralvin asked. The human ship. They're broadcasting on open channels. They're singing. Thralvin accessed the audio feed. Human voices filled the bridge. Hundreds of them singing in unison. The song was in their native language. He had the computer translate it. The words spoke of sacrifice, of duty, of standing against impossible odds. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The Krellian super dreadnought launched another wave of fighters. Its hangar bay doors opened. 8 seconds! That was all the time they had. The Indomitable accelerated. Full power, all engines burning. The damaged cruiser crossed the distance in 6 seconds. It crashed through the opening just as the shields reactivated. The impact was devastating. Thralvin watched on long-range sensors as the human ship tore through the hangar bay, smashing through parked fighters and equipment. The Indomitable came to rest deep inside the Eternal Harmony, lodged in the wreckage of what had been a pristine military hangar. Life signs? Admiral Krelthax asked. Thralvin checked his sensors. 312 human signatures. 88 killed in the impact. Already down to 78% strength. And the fight had not even started. What happened next would become legend throughout the Confederation. 4 hours of brutal close-quarters combat. Humans fighting through a ship designed to hold 15,000 Krellian warriors. Thralvin monitored their progress through sensor readings and intercepted communications. The humans split into small teams. They moved through the ship like ghosts, using ventilation systems, crawling through maintenance tunnels, attacking from unexpected angles. The Krellians tried to contain them, failed. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. Lieutenant Mireille was with them. Thralvin recognized her biosignature. She moved through the combat zones with her medical kit, treating wounded even as the fighting continued around her. In one intercepted communication, he heard her arguing with a wounded soldier. I'm fine, the soldier said. Keep moving. You're bleeding out, Mireille replied. Hold still. We don't have time. I said hold still. She treated him. 45 seconds. Then they moved on. Both of them. The soldier should not have been able to walk. But humans pushed their bodies beyond normal limits. Pain was temporary. Death was permanent. They chose to keep fighting. The human teams converged on the reactor core after 9 hours. Thralvin watched their biosignatures cluster in one location. There were only 147 left. Over half had died reaching their objective. Captain Jinho's voice came over emergency channels. To all Confederation forces. This is Captain Jinho of the Indomitable. We have reached the core. Setting charges now. Recommend you pull back to minimum safe distance. Captain, what about evacuation? Admiral Krelthax asked. We can send rescue ships. No time, Jinho said. His voice was calm. The Krellians are converging on our position. We have maybe 5 minutes before they overwhelm us. The charges need 8 minutes to properly set. We'll hold here. For those we left behind. The communication cut off. Thralvin's hands shook as he worked his console. On the tactical display, he could see Krellian forces surrounding the human position. Thousands of warriors, against less than 150 humans. The humans started singing again. That same song. Voices filled the communication channels one final time. Thralvin listened to them die, one by one. The biosignatures winked out on his display. But the singing continued. The survivors singing for the fallen, for their ship. For each other. Lieutenant Mireille's voice cut through the song. Captain, I've lost 3 more. They're gone. Keep the others stable, Jinho replied. 2 more minutes. Sir, there are Krellians at the door. 2 more minutes, Lieutenant. The door exploded inward. Weapons fire filled the communication channel. Screaming, human and Krellian. The sounds of close combat. Desperate, brutal, final. Thralvin watched the biosignatures drop. 147. 112, 83, 51. Charges set, Jinho said. His voice was strained, injured. Detonation in 60 seconds. It has been an honor serving with you all. 28 signatures remaining. Admiral Krelthax, make sure they remember us. Jinho continued. Not as the crew that died. As the crew that won. 15 signatures. For those we left behind, multiple human voices said together. The eternal harmony exploded. Not from the outside. From within. The reactor breach sent a cascade of energy through every system. The mighty super dreadnought that was supposed to be unsinkable broke apart in a flash of light that briefly outshone the nearby star. The bridge of the Confederation flagship was absolutely silent. Thralvin stared at his console. The area where the eternal harmony had been showed only debris and radiation. His sensors detected no life signs. None. All 400 crew members of the Indomitable were gone. Admiral Krelthax stood slowly. His scales had turned completely white. Shock. They did it. They actually did it. At what cost? Someone whispered. Thralvin knew the answer. The cost was 400 lives. 400 humans who chose to die so that others could live. They had looked at the mathematics of war and made their decision. Without hesitation. Without regret. Days later, Thralvin accessed the final recordings from the Indomitable. He found footage from Lieutenant Mireille's helmet camera. She had been treating a wounded soldier when the reactor exploded. Her last words were recorded clearly. Stay with me, she told the dying soldier. You're not alone. She held his hand as the world ended. Thralvin understood then what made humans so terrifying. They weaponized everything, even their own mortality. They turned death itself into a tactical advantage. But they never died alone. The war had continued for another year after the destruction of the Eternal Harmony. Brutal, grinding, exhausting. Neither side could claim victory. Both sides bled resources and lives. When the Krellian Dominion finally requested peace talks, the entire Confederation breathed a sigh of relief. Thralvin accompanied the delegation to Concordia Prime, a neutral diplomatic station. He served as chief military advisor now. His job was to provide tactical assessments during negotiations, to help the diplomats understand what terms were militarily viable. The Confederation delegation was large. Diplomats from a dozen species, military officers, economic advisors, all preparing for complex negotiations that could take months. The conference hall was enormous, with space for hundreds of people. The human delegation was 3 people. Thralvin stared at them across the arrival bay. Ambassador Sunwoo, a human male who wore simple diplomatic robes. General Hyejin, a human female in military uniform who stood rather than sat. And a third human, older, who wore a plain gray suit and never spoke. No one introduced him. That's their entire delegation? Admiral Krelthax asked quietly. Apparently, Thralvin said. He felt uneasy. Humans never did things without purpose. 3 negotiators suggested either arrogance or confidence. With humans, it was usually the latter. The Krellian delegation arrived with appropriate ceremony. High Counselor Drevix led them, surrounded by advisors and guards, 50 Krellians total. They moved with the confidence of warriors who believed they were entering negotiations from a position of strength. The opening session began formally. Both sides took their positions in the conference hall. The Confederation diplomats looked nervous. The Krellians looked determined. The humans looked calm, too calm. High Counselor Drevix spoke first. His voice boomed through the hall. "We come to negotiate an end to this wasteful conflict. The Krellian Dominion seeks peace with honor. We propose the following terms." He activated a holographic display. Lists of demands appeared in the air. Thralvin read them quickly. Territory concessions. Resource rights, reparations, military restrictions on Confederation forces. The terms were harsh but not unexpected. This was a starting position for negotiation. The Confederation diplomats began whispering among themselves. Preparing counterproposals. Standard diplomatic procedure. This would take weeks to resolve. Ambassador Sunwoo raised one hand. The hall fell quiet. "We came to listen to your surrender terms," the human said simply. The hall erupted. Krellian delegates roared in outrage. Confederation diplomats gasped. Admiral Krelthax's scales turned bright orange with shock. Thralvin felt his forearms go rigid. High Counselor Drevix's face twisted with anger. "You misunderstand the situation, Ambassador. We are not surrendering. We are offering you the chance to end this war before more of your people die." "No," Sunwoo said. His voice remained calm, conversational. "You misunderstand. Let me explain." He gestured to the empty air. A new holographic display activated, not from the conference hall systems, from a portable device the humans had brought. The images showed human military engagements, but not recent ones, historical ones. "This is Earth, our homeworld, approximately 200 years ago," Sunwoo began. "This footage shows what we call World War II, a global conflict between human nations. 80 million people died, 80 million of our own species. The footage showed cities burning, massive armies clashing, weapons that destroyed entire city blocks. This is another conflict approximately 100 years ago. Nuclear weapons, devices that use atomic chain reactions to create explosions, equivalent to millions of tons of conventional explosives. Humans developed these weapons, used them twice, then collectively decided they were too terrible to use again. We have not deployed nuclear weapons in combat for over a century." More footage played. Mushroom clouds rising over cities. The aftermath of atomic destruction. This is chemical warfare. Gases that dissolve tissue. Biological weapons. Engineered diseases. Weapons so cruel that we banned them through international treaty. Not because we could not make them, but because we chose not to. The footage continued. Human history laid bare. Wars that killed millions. Technologies of destruction that made Confederation weapons look primitive. The delegates watched in growing horror. Sunwoo's voice remained steady throughout. Clinical, factual. "Humans have fought approximately 15,000 documented wars in our recorded history. We have killed over 1 billion of our own species through warfare. We know exactly what we are capable of. We know exactly how far we can fall, do you?" The question hung in the air like a blade. High Counselor Drevix's anger faltered. Uncertainty crept into his expression. This is meant to frighten us?" "No," Sunwoo said. "This is meant to inform you. You need to understand who you are negotiating with. You need to understand what happens if these negotiations fail." General Hyejin finally moved. She had been standing motionless at the back of the human delegation. Now she walked forward. Her boots struck the floor with deliberate force. She stopped directly in front of the Krellian delegation. "We haven't mobilized Earth yet," she said. Her voice was cold, hard. "Our homeworld has 12 billion people. Do you know how many humans are currently serving in military roles throughout Confederation space? 43 million, less than 1% of our total population." She let that sink in. If we mobilized Earth, if we activated full military production, if we converted our economy to total war footing, which we have done 3 times in our history, we could field an army of 600 million soldiers. We could build 10,000 warships. We could turn every asteroid in this sector into a military base. Thralvin felt cold. He had not known these numbers. No one had. Humans had kept their true industrial capacity hidden. "We haven't done this," Hyejin continued, "because we don't want to. War is expensive, wasteful. We prefer peace. But do not mistake our preference for inability. We can afford this war far longer than you can. The third human finally moved. The older man in the gray suit stepped forward. He looked ordinary, unremarkable, but something about him made Thralvin's skin crawl. My name is Secretary Wubin, the man said quietly. I oversee humanity's military strategic planning. I want to show you something. Another holographic display activated. This one showed tactical projections, computer simulations. Thralvin recognized military planning software. The scenarios played out in fast forward. This is what happens if the war continues, Wubin said. Year 4. We begin targeting your industrial worlds, not with invasion, with blockade. We starve your economy. Year 5. We activate psychological warfare protocols, broadcast programs designed to create civil unrest in your population. Year 6. We begin the Broken Planet Doctrine. What is that? High Counselor Dravix asked. His voice shook slightly. Scorched galaxy, Wubin said simply. We destroy every resource-rich planet in contested space. Not to claim them, to deny them to you. We poison atmospheres, crack asteroids, turn entire systems into navigation hazards. If we cannot have them, no one can. It is not efficient. It is not honorable. But it works. The simulations showed planets burning, systems going dark, the Krellian Dominion collapsing under economic pressure and internal chaos. The timeline stretched to 8 years, 10, 15. In every scenario, the Krellians lost. These projections assume you fight intelligently, Wubin continued. Assume you adapt. Assume you learn. Assume you do everything right. You still lose. Because we have been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We know how to break nations. We know how to destroy economies. We know how to turn populations against their governments. We have done it to ourselves repeatedly. Doing it to you would be straightforward. Thralvin realized he was shaking. The humans had not just planned to win the war. They had planned to destroy the Krellian Dominion completely, as a society, as a people, and they had shown these plans to the Krellians deliberately. This was not negotiation. This was psychological devastation. Ambassador Sunwoo stood. So let me ask again, High Counselor. What are your surrender terms? What do you need to end this war and withdraw from Confederation space? We are willing to be generous. We do not want to implement these scenarios, but we will if forced, without hesitation. The room was absolutely silent. Every eye turned to the Krellian delegation. High Counselor Dravix looked like he had aged a decade in the last 20 minutes. His advisors whispered frantically among themselves. You would truly do this? Dravix asked quietly. Destroy entire systems? Just to win? To end the war quickly and prevent more death, yes, Sunwoo said. The longer this war continues, the more people die. On both sides. We are trying to minimize casualties. Even yours. The fastest way to save lives is to make continued warfare unthinkable. We are making it unthinkable. Thralvin watched the Krellian delegation crumble. These were proud warriors. Fierce people who valued honor and strength. And in 47 minutes, 3 humans had broken them completely. Not with weapons. Not with violence. With the simple, terrifying truth of what humanity was capable of doing. High Counselor Dravix stood slowly. We need to consult with our government. Of course, Sunwoo said. Take your time. We will be here. The Krellian delegation retreated. The conference hall emptied slowly. Only the human delegation and a few Confederation observers remained. The Veterans Hall had grown completely silent. Thralvin's voice had faded to a whisper as he finished the story of the negotiation. Around him, dozens of beings sat frozen, young soldiers, historians, civilians, all processing what they had heard. Kyra, the human historian, had stopped recording long ago. She simply listened, her expression unreadable. A young Krellian stood suddenly. He was barely old enough to serve in the military. His scales still held the bright green of youth. Why did you help them? His voice shook with emotion. My grandfather fought in that war. He died during the retreat. Why did you help the humans do this to my people? Thralvin looked at the young warrior for a long moment. His forearms trembled slightly. Age, exhaustion, memory. Because I learned something, Thralvin said quietly. Something that changed everything I thought I understood about warfare, about humanity, about myself. He stood slowly, his joints protesting. Let me tell you about the day I stopped being afraid of humans. The day I started understanding them. Thralvin walked to the center of the hall. Everyone's eyes followed him. It was 3 years into the war, after Blackwater Station, after the Eternal Harmony, after dozens of other battles. I was wounded during a raid on a Krellian supply depot. My ship was damaged, life support failing. I drifted in space for 6 hours before anyone found me. He paused, remembering the cold, the darkness, the slow certainty of death approaching. A medical ship picked up my distress beacon. When they brought me aboard, I was barely conscious, hypothermic, oxygen deprived, dying. I remember opening my eyes and seeing a human face looking down at me. Lieutenant Mireille. She smiled, that gentle human smile. And she said, "You're safe now. I've got you." Thralvin's voice caught. Even after 50 years, the memory was sharp. She treated me, personally, for 3 days. I learned later that we had been on opposite sides during that engagement. Her side won, my side lost. By all military logic, I was her enemy. She could have left me in a cell, given me basic medical care and nothing more. That would have been acceptable under war conventions. He looked around the hall. She did not do that. She sat with me, talked to me, asked about my family, my home, treated me like a person, not an enemy. When I asked her why, she looked confused. She said, "Because you're hurt. That's all that matters right now." Thralvin's scales shifted colors, blue and green, sadness mixed with warmth. I watched her work during my recovery. She treated everyone the same. Confederation soldiers, Krellian prisoners, her own wounded crew. It did not matter to her who they were, only that they needed help. I saw her give her own meal rations to a Krellian prisoner who was recovering from surgery. I saw her stay awake for 36 hours straight, treating casualties from both sides. The young Krellian sat down slowly, his anger fading into confusion. One night I asked her how she could do it, how she could be so kind to enemies, how she could smile after seeing so much death, after losing so many friends. She thought about it for a long time. Then she said something I will never forget. Thralvin's voice grew stronger. "We fight like we do because we remember what peace feels like. We know what we're protecting. We know what we're trying to get back to. If we become monsters to fight, monsters, then what's the point? We lose anyway, even if we win." The hall was absolutely silent now. That was when I understood, Thralvin continued. Humans are not terrifying because they are brutal. They are terrifying because they choose when to be brutal. They control it, direct it. They can be the most vicious warriors in the galaxy one moment, and the most compassionate healers the next. That choice, that deliberate control, that is what makes them truly dangerous. He looked at the young Krellian directly. "Your grandfather died during the retreat, you said. I am sorry for your loss. But I want you to understand something. The reason the Krellian Dominion accepted peace terms, the reason they withdrew instead of fighting to the last warrior, is because humans showed them mercy, not weakness. Mercy. They could have destroyed your entire civilization. They chose not to. They let your people retreat with honor. They allowed prisoners to return home. They even provided humanitarian aid to Krellian worlds affected by the war." The young Krellian's expression shifted. "I did not know that." "Most do not," Thralvin said. "History remembers the battles, the violence, the terror. History forgets the mercy that came after. But I was there. I saw it. Humans are capable of incredible brutality when fighting, but they are equally capable of incredible compassion when the fighting stops." A sound at the entrance made everyone turn. An elderly human walked into the hall. He moved slowly, supported by a cane. His hair was completely white. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were bright and alert. Thralvin's 4 arms spread wide in greeting. "Jinho." Captain Jinho, now just an old man in civilian clothes, smiled, that same friendly smile from 50 years ago. "Thrall, I heard you were finally telling the stories." Thought I should probably be here. They met in the center of the hall. Thralvin gripped Jinho's hand in the human custom. The handshake lasted longer than necessary. Two old soldiers, two old friends, survivors of a war that had defined both their lives. You got old, Thralvin said. You got gray, Jinho replied. They both laughed. The sound was warm, comfortable. The laugh of people who had seen the worst of each other and still chosen friendship. They sat together. Kira approached cautiously, her recording device back in hand. Captain Jinho, if I may ask, when you fought during the war, when you did those things Commander Thralvin described, were you trying to be scary? To terrorize the enemy? Jinho thought about it. His expression grew serious. No. We were trying to survive, and we were trying to end the war as quickly as possible. Every day the war continued, more people died. On both sides. We fought the way we did because we calculated it would save lives in the long run. Make future conflicts unthinkable. Make peace inevitable. But you killed so many, the young Krellian said. Your tactics were brutal. Yes, Jinho agreed. They were. And I will carry that weight until I die. Every soldier I killed. Every life I ended. I remember them. We all do. That is part of being human. We do not forget the cost of our choices. Thralvin added, that is what people do not understand. Humans do not fight without conscience. They fight despite their conscience. They know the moral weight of what they do. They carry it. And they do it anyway, because they believe the alternative is worse. Would you do it again? Kira asked. Both of you. If another war started, would you fight that way again? Jinho and Thralvin looked at each other. A long, silent conversation passed between them. Finally, Thralvin spoke. If we had to, yes. But we would rather not have to. That is the lesson of the contact wars. That is what the younger generation needs to understand. Peace is always preferable, always. But peace must be backed by the willingness to defend it. By any means necessary. Jinho nodded. The most effective warriors are those who understand peace, who value it, who fight to preserve it, not to glory in violence. That is what humanity learned through our own bloody history, and that is what we tried to teach the galaxy. They stood together, two old soldiers helping each other up. Jinho looked around the hall. Come on, Thrall. There is something I want to show you. They left the hall together. Kira and the others followed. Outside, the sun was setting over the Valthrine homeworld. Beautiful colors painted the sky. They walked slowly to a memorial garden. The Garden of Unity, it was called. Built after the war ended. The memorial wall stretched for 50 meters. Names carved into dark stone. Human names. Valthrine names. Krellian names. Names from all the species that had fought and died during the contact wars. Thousands of names. Each one a life ended. Each one a story untold. Jinho stopped at one section. His hand traced names carved into the stone. My crew. The Indomitable. 400 names. I am the only survivor. Thralvin's scales turned deep blue. Mourning. I am sorry, old friend. Don't be, Jinho said. They died doing what they believed was right, protecting others, ending a threat. They made their choice knowing the cost. I honor them by remembering, by living well, by making sure their sacrifice meant something. They stood in silence for a long time. The young Krellian approached hesitantly. My grandfather's name is here too, Warrior Galtor. He died with honor. They all did, Jinho said softly. On both sides. This memorial does not separate by faction. We all fought. We all bled. We all lost people we loved. The war is over. Now we remember together. Kyra recorded it all. The memorial, the sunset, the two old veterans standing together, the young warrior from a former enemy nation joining them in remembrance. It was a powerful image, one that would be shown in schools and museums for generations. As darkness fell, Lights activated throughout the garden. Soft glows that illuminated each name. Thousands of lights like stars. Thralvin thought it was fitting. These people had burned briefly but brightly. Now they were remembered, honored, eternal. The most chilling thing about humanity, Thralvin said quietly, is not how they wage war. It is that they are capable of such calculated brutality, yet they choose mercy when they can. That choice, that control, that is what makes them truly dangerous, because it means everything they do in war is deliberate, purposeful,